This is a much requested video. I'm going to be showing all of you all of my enclosures. Keeper, and this week I am going to be talking all about enclosures, the enclosures that I currently keep all of my snakes in, and future plans for upgrades. So I'm going to start with my retics. I keep all of my reticulated pythons that are my own in toad ranch enclosures. So all of my yearlings or soon to be yearling animals are in 4x2x2 toad ranch enclosures. Toad Ranch is a brand of PVC enclosures. I keep all of them bioactive, and each one of my yearling retics have lots of different various plants, cleanup crews, and 2 out of those 3 enclosures have shelves. So Chihaya and Centauri, which are my 2 female yearlings, have a nice cliffhanger shelf. Shy does not have his shelf installed yet. I do have it. Life has just been really crazy, so he will get it installed eventually. But I really like these enclosures. The plants seem to be doing very, very well and establishing really, really well. I did do a very kind of standard no-no with these enclosures because I planted all of the plants kind of after the snakes were already in the enclosures. General practice is to plant them and let them kind of root and establish for at least 2 weeks up to a month, or however long you're able to before moving the animal in there. But so far, the plants that I have in the yearling enclosures are doing really, really well. I have some various Ficus trees in there that are doing really, really well, and some various inch plants, as well as philodendrons. And what else do I have in there? Oh, the snake plants. So all of my yearlings are in 4x2x2 enclosures. They are growing relatively quickly, so they are going to grow out of these enclosures probably by the end of this year. It is June right now. I'm hoping to upgrade them sometime over the winter, if not at the very latest next spring. I'll probably wind up just upgrading them into their final adult version of their enclosures. The plan is to get them 10x3x3 enclosures at the very minimum, at least for the females. I might try and go a little bit bigger for the girls, especially the girls that are estimated to get a little bit bigger. For my smaller estimated adults, like my male Shy, he might stay as small as 7 feet. So I might go a little bit smaller with him. But again, I mean, the way that I have seen my retics interact with their environments, I feel like the bigger enclosure I can provide for them, the better, because they really do utilize all of the space that I offer them. So I still might go with, you know, a 10x3x3, or nope, not a 10x3x3, sorry, a 10x, no, it is a 10x3x3. My brain isn't working. So yeah, 10x3x3 is kind of the goal for all of the upgrades for my yearlings. And then moving over to Aries enclosure, he is currently in a 6x4x2, so 6 feet long, 4 feet tall, 2 feet deep. And eventually, this enclosure works really nicely for him right now. He's got that switchback custom cliffhanger shelving unit that I installed a little while ago. If you'd like to see the installation of that, you can click on the link over here. But he seems to really enjoy this space. The plants are doing really well. He also has a couple of ficus trees. He has a parlor home that is actually growing really, really nicely. He also has a couple of philodendron plants, as well as a couple of pathos plants. And he's one of those animals that he just likes being out of his enclosure. So I don't think it matters how big of an enclosure I have for him. He will always seek for additional enrichment outside of his enclosure. But I still might look at upgrading him also to a 10 by 3 by 3, just for the sake of giving him more space, because if I can, then why the heck not? But yeah, this is his current enclosure, and then eventually I will probably wind up upgrading him as well. So those are all 4 of my own retics, and then moving over to the boas that I have downstairs. This is my snake room downstairs in my basement. So the boas, I have Twee down here. He is my 2-year-old BCI. He is in a 6 foot long, 2 foot wide, 2 foot deep enclosure. He seems to really do well in this enclosure. He utilizes the space really well. I do want to add a shelf in there for him, so I'll order a cliffhanger shelf for him in the future, in the near future. Actually, I want to get on that fairly soon. His plants are doing really, really well. He is a heavier bodied snake, but he actually, I mean, his plants, I've never actually, knock on wood, had to replace any of his plants. He has several different snake plants in here. He has a Philodendron. I cannot remember what variety it is. He also has another plant that I can't remember the name of. He has a ZZ plant and a couple of other various plants. I'll make a list for everyone down in the description below so you can kind of see what I have in each animal's enclosure, just in case you see something that strikes your interest, or if you have the same species and you want to give that plant a try. But yeah, as much as he moves around in his enclosure, he does a really good job of taking care of his plants. I always joke that my snakes take better care of their plants than I do, and I don't think I'm far off the truth. So yeah, if you're worried about your snake destroying plants, I would suggest maybe giving some of these plants a try, because I think there is a way to do bioactive successfully with snakes, even the heavier bodied snakes, and do it in a way that works. So yeah, he's in his 6 by 2 by 2. He's getting to be around 5 feet long, so he's still got a little bit of room to grow in his enclosure. Eventually, I think I would like to get him into an enclosure that has a little bit more height, for the sake of just being able to get some more plants and stuff and a little bit more shelving for him. And then we have Ivy's enclosure, and she is my Colombian rainbow boa. She is the first bioactive enclosure that I did. This enclosure is the most established of the bioactive enclosures that I have. She has the one custom wall that I built, so it's holding up really, really well. And she has a bunch of different plants as well. Again, snake plants. She has some Philodendron Brazil. She also has some inch plants, as well as some peperomia in there, and all of them are doing really, really well. And yeah, I mean, Colombian rainbow boas and Brazilian rainbow boas in general, do really well with bioactive enclosures because they hold humidity really nicely. And I find that it's actually really easy to adjust the humidity level in a bioactive versus in a naturalistic, or especially if you keep on paper, it can be a little bit more challenging to adjust that humidity level. The other thing that I do for all of my enclosures, bioactive or not, is I actually have installed a fan on the outside of the enclosure on one of the vents, so that way they can get some airflow every day. So those fans click on 3 times each day for about 30 minutes at a time to kind of mimic some natural airflow throughout the day. So those are currently all 7, I had to count, 7 of my bioactive enclosures. I have one additional bioactive enclosure upstairs is actually the way that I have done my quarantine enclosure for my little baby Brazilian rainbow boa, and her name is Iris. She is, oh, how old is she? March, April, May. She's about 3 months old now, so she's growing little girl. Brazilians tend to grow very slow, so this enclosure actually has quite a bit of space for her to grow. However, if you notice, this enclosure is glass, so it's not my favorite way to keep, especially bioactive, especially an enclosure that you need to keep higher humidity. But we did have a custom glass top made for it with tiny little kind of screens along the top, so it holds humidity much better than a screen top. So that works nicely. We do have a custom enclosure coming from Toad Ranch that fits the dimensions of the stand that she is currently sitting atop. So that's going to be an upgrade for her. That enclosure will be a little bit bigger than the one she's currently living in. It will be set up, again, bioactive, and it will also have some shelving units. It will have better like basking options for her. So really excited to upgrade her to that when it arrives. It'll probably be a few more weeks before that gets here. And then my other quarantine enclosure upstairs is a naturalistic setup for Law. She is my other PCI that we have here at home. And yes, she is sitting on our dining room counter right now because she's in quarantine. So that's the one space that we had left for a quarantine room in our home. So she is there right now. Both her and Iris are actually almost to a point where we can take them out of quarantine, so that will be nice. So she is on paper because, again, she is in quarantine. And the reason that I have her on paper and Iris on a bioactive substrate is because BCIs don't need as high of a humidity level, and that particular PVC enclosure that she's living in has really thick PVC panels, so it holds humidity almost too well. So I find if I'm keeping something like a BCI or something that needs a little bit of a lower humidity level, I keep her right around 60% humidity. Sometimes it fluctuates up to 70. Then keeping paper with a little bit of sphagnum moss and her water dish keeps that humidity level exactly where I want it to be. So it works really nicely. She still has a lot of decor and enrichment. And yes, she does have a live plant in there. It's still in its pot. I got it from one of my favorite plant stores. But yeah, just to offer her a little bit of extra enrichment, and it will just move into, I'll just plant that exact plant into a bioactive enclosure whenever I get her upgraded into one. But she will also get upgraded into a bioactive in the future. I'm going to, I want to move her into her adult bioactive when I move her. She is a very inquisitive, confident little bean, so I think by the time she outgrows that enclosure that she's currently in, which is a 4 foot by 2 foot by like 1 foot, I think. So it's a sizable enclosure already, but I think by the time she's ready to move out of that and outgrows it, I can put her in her full grown enclosure, which will be minimum 8 foot long, with a little bit of height and some depth in there. I haven't decided on the exact dimensions for her. I'm going to continue observing her behavior and kind of make that decision based on that. So yeah, so that is for Law. And then we come to these last two enclosures. These are two enclosures that we got. They're very affordable, so we're using them as kind of temporary enclosures for the 2 additional retics that we have. They're not technically ours, they are on breeder loan. This is April O'Neil on the top and Stella is on the bottom. These enclosures are 8 feet long, 2 feet deep, 2 feet tall. So they're sizable enclosures. April O'Neil is probably between 6 to 7 feet long. She's got plenty of space in her enclosure, but it's a little lacking in enrichment, so I want to upgrade her eventually. She's also very active, so I would love to get her into something a little bit taller with some shelving units and maybe a little bit deeper. So I'm gonna do some research and see what I can get for her, or if I can just add some shelving into her current space to kind of give her a little bit more options for enrichment. And then for Stella, she's our big girl. She's 12 feet long. She's a big mama. So I want to upgrade her into, I think I'm going to actually experiment with her and get her a 12-foot long, 30 inches deep, 4-foot tall enclosure, and get some custom cliffhanger shelving units in there and do it bioactive. So she would be the biggest snake that I will set up bioactive, but I want to try it and see how well it works, because again, she's big, but she's also active. Like even in the 8-foot enclosure, she moves around a lot. You can't see her in the video that I got of her enclosure because she's currently in shed, and she likes to hide away in her big hide when she's in shed and kind of disappear, much like any other snake. But just like any other snake, when she's not in shed, she will explore around like crazy and want to be active, and she does. I feel like she's asking for more space. She boops the front of her enclosure where the those aren't glass panels, they're acrylic, so she'll kind of bump the acrylic panels with her nose, and at that point, like if I hear that, I open up her enclosure and she'll come out and explore and want to get some additional exercise. So I definitely want to give her a little bit more. An 8-foot long enclosure for a 12-foot long snake isn't quite up to my own personal standards for how I like to keep my animals. I really like to give my animals, however long they are, I like to give them the option to stretch out along one single side of their enclosure at minimum. So yeah, we'll see how that works. It's kind of a bigger investment, but I have some other plans around kind of experimenting with that bigger enclosure with some other things for her as well. So yeah, stay tuned for that. But yeah, those are all of the current upgrade plans and current how I keep my animals. I do apologize. I know April O'Neil has some pee in her enclosure. She had just gone to the bathroom, just for me, just for that little clip. So, but she's also in shed. So they've been kind of very potato snake the last couple weeks. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on. I'm doing my best to be full transparency with everyone on my channel and on Instagram with how I keep and care for my animals. I know it's really easy to get caught up in the like bioactive and super pretty, and not all of my animals are currently kept in bioactive. Some of them are in quarantine, some of them are in temporary enclosures, so it's all a work in progress, and I just like to be transparent about that. As always, don't forget to support US ARC and US ARC Official. They are fighting like crazy to help us maintain our rights and privilege to care and share these amazing animals with everyone. And also huge shout out and thank you to our Patreon members. If you are interested in becoming a Patreon member, you can check out the link below. All of the Patreon support goes to care of the animals, so helping with enclosure upgrades and things like that. So huge thank you to all of you. I really appreciate it. And until next time, I will catch you later. Bye. So this week I'm going to be doing, brain isn't working, hold on. Testing, oh, I'm short. Alright, I think, look, crooked. Think that'll work. Cool.